What is going on, guys? It's Tapen, the Average Gamer, back with another video. And here today, we're going to be going over 5 tips to find your perfect sensitivity in Fortnite. Now, this is a topic that comes up a lot, so I'm excited to dive right in. All right, so the first thing you have to understand before you start messing around with your sensitivity is how your most DPI affects your non-ADS sensitivity and how that in turn affects your ADS sensitivity, and how to maintain kind of a consistent feel when you end up going to aim down sights. Something that I change a lot personally is my non-ADS sensitivity. So if I'm messing around with shotgun fights, build sensitivity, whatever, I will usually mess around with my non-ADS sensitivity first, and then I'm usually stuck trying to guess what do I have to change my ADS sensitivity to make sure that that's consistent. Um, so there's a formula that you can use that is pretty simple, and allows you to kind of calculate your total sensitivity. So how this is done is you take your most DPI, so in my case it's 800, and then you multiply that by your non-ADS sensitivity. So for me right now it's 0.15, and that will give you your total non-ADS sensitivity. So for me that is 120. You then take that total non-ADS sensitivity and multiply it by your ADS sensitivity. So in my situation, it's 0.63. And what that will give you is your total ADS sensitivity. So this is in-game what your sensitivity actually feels like when you're aimed down sights. And this is important because when you start to change your non-ADS sensitivity to find your shotgun sensitivity or your building sensitivity, you want to have a consistent aim down sight sensitivity. So the example that I'm putting up on screen right now is a new sensitivity. So you're starting with 800 DPI. You are lowering your non-ADS sensitivity to 0.12, which gives you a new total non-ADS sensitivity of 96. Now, when you multiply that by your new ADS sensitivity, the goal is to get it as close, if not exactly, to your old total ADS sensitivity. So the goal was 75.6, and basically you plug in a number here. I came out with 0.79 was what my new ADS sensitivity needs to be in order to give you that total ADS sensitivity of 75.84. So it's a little bit higher, but it's still very close. And again, the reason why this is very important is so that when you start to aim down sights while in gunfights, it'll feel the same as before. You're only manipulating your non-ADS sensitivity. All right, so for the next tip, guys, you're going to want to look into tracking opponents. And what I mean by this is essentially moving your cursor along with an opponent while they're moving. And an easy way to practice this is to go into playground mode and to go to the blue cube for aim training. And as you can see on screen, I'm just running along and trying to keep my aim kind of ahead of the opponent a little bit, as if you were in a regular game. And essentially what the goal here is if you're too high with your sensitivity, it's going to be very difficult to keep it consistent. And if you're too low, you won't be able to keep up. So you want to find the middle ground where you can keep it fairly consistent and essentially track without any issues. Now, eventually you're going to want to get to the point where you start shooting at the moving targets. And again, this is a great tool that's built right into the game. You just start the training and watch them run and just shoot at them as you will. Um, After watching this clip of myself, I realized that I might want to lower my sensitivity a little bit. It might be a little bit too high. I'm missing quite a few shots. Um, and I don't really notice it while I'm in game. This is a really good way to isolate it in an environment where you're not being challenged or you're not stressed out, and really get that feel and that hand-eye coordination down. All right, so the next tip is going to be to go into playground mode and practice building 90s and 1x1s. And essentially what this is going to do is for one, it's going to tell you if your sensitivity is high enough to be able to turn effectively without kind of running out of mouse pad space or just kind of getting cramped up or tired. It also helps with if your sensitivity is too high and you're just building chaotically and everything's going all over the place and you can't control it. It's also just a good habit before you start to play to go in and work on building 90s, work on building one by ones, put some roofs above your head as you see in these clips I do a couple times, and edit through them and just kind of get warmed up a little bit. But yeah, this will definitely help give you some direction whether or not your sensitivity is either too low or too high. Now, the next tip is going to be something that I'm sure you've seen before, and it's farming materials. Now, when you're farming materials, you're going to want to jump around, you're going to want to move around, and that way you're not just a standing target just waiting to get shot. It also helps improve your aim, and it also gives you an indicator whether or not your sensitivity is too low or too high. If it's comfortable to move and try to hit that center dot, then you're usually in a good spot. Now, you're not going to hit the center dot every single time you do it. That's just, Fortnite. Sometimes it won't register it, or sometimes you'll just straight up miss. But as long as it feels comfortable for you, you'll be in a good spot. It also helps for in-game when you're actually farming for real and people might be shooting at you. If you can jump around, you can move around, you'll be in a better position to not get shot. And finally, it helps with those flicks for shotgunning. So when you're jumping around in a shotgun fight, if you can bring your aim right down to that center point, you're going to have much better luck in shotgun fights. So all in all, it's definitely something that's worth doing. It takes zero time. You can do it in real time while playing the game. And it's a good way to improve both your aim and to figure out whether or not your sensitivity is good for you. All right, guys, so the final tip that I have for you, and it might be something that was predictable based on the first tip, but it's be consistent. So, a mistake that a lot of us tend to make well too often is we'll mess around with our sensitivity way too much. So, we might go into one game, we'll die because we missed a bunch of shots, and we'll immediately go, okay, I need to, lower my sensitivity or raise my sensitivity. It you won't find much improvement if you change it too much. So what I would recommend is to find something that's baseline comfortable by doing the tips in this video. And once it's pretty good and you feel okay with it, leave it for a couple of days and play with it and then tweak it a little bit as needed. But don't go in every single game and drastically change it, because what you're going to find is that you won't build any muscle memory and you won't be able to find any real improvements. So be consistent with it, find that baseline, and then fine tune it as needed, but give yourself a couple of days to get used to it before making any changes. Anyway, that's enough from me. Hope you find these tips helpful, and I'll see you in the next video. Peace.